A few years ago, I went to the Canary Islands as a part of a bigger trip I was doing during that summer. Therefore, I only gave myself a few days to explore the place. On my first day, I decided to walk around the town I was in and to explore a nearby mountain. From there, we could see the largest volcano of the region. On the second day, I decided to visit that large volcano. However, the bus that went there did not pass very often, so I basically only had one shot to not miss it. Therefore, I woke up at 6 a.m. to make sure I would not miss the bus. I arrived early, so everything was going according to plan. Then I saw my bus, so I got up, but it didn't stop and just passed by me. I was a bit surprised and disappointed since I was leaving the island the following morning, so I headed back to the hostel. Once there, I learned that you have to signal the bus driver for them to stop, otherwise they'll just ignore you. It was useful knowledge, but it was also a bit late to know. Luckily, I had a new idea. I remembered something about a huge cliff on the west coast of the island. I figured I might as well go there, so I checked on Google Maps. I also saw a bicycle shop nearby, so I made my plan. I would head down to the coast and towards the cliff. Then I'd take a path up the mountain, right through a few small towns, and head back down to the hostel. It was still early, so I figured I had enough time to do all of that. The bicycle shop closed at 8 p.m., so as long as I made it back before then, I should be fine. The first part of my trip started at about 600 meters above sea level and down towards the coast. Since that part wasn't too physically demanding, I could take the time to enjoy the landscape. As I went down, I noticed that the landscape became increasingly arid. After passing through a few small towns, I eventually made it to the coast. The area had a few taller buildings, but it was also quite desolate as barely anyone was outside. There was even an abandoned hotel along the way. It was also increasingly cloudy. I kept going north until I reached a white structure surrounded by black sand. From there, I could finally see the cliffs. At that point, it almost felt like I was preparing myself to destroy a Horcrux with Dumbledore. Anyways, from that point on, I would be hiking up a dirt path. I barely had any water left, and I would have to push my bike up the trail. It seemed like a bad idea, so I figured why not? I don't do that kind of stuff very often after all. At first, the hiking trail wasn't too hard, so it felt encouraging. After a few minutes, I saw what the rest of the trail looked like, and I wasn't so encouraged anymore. The trail had a cliff wall on one side and a very steep drop on the other. There was also not a lot of space for both me and my bike. Since I had already decided to go up, going down wasn't an option anymore, so I kept going. After a while, I passed a group of about 30 elderly tourists walking down the trail. It was unexpected considering where I was, but I didn't have the energy to question it, so I let them pass and kept going. I made it to an observation area on top of the cliff about halfway through the trail. I took a few pictures and drank the last bit of water I had left, then I went back on my journey. The second half of the trail was harder to get through. It was generally steeper and more uneven. It was also quite a bit less traveled. I also had to lift the bike above my head for a while because pushing it wasn't very effective anymore. The drop off the side of the path was also getting larger, so I definitely didn't want to slip. I eventually made it to the top, but I was extremely thirsty and quite exhausted. Luckily, there was a small village, so I went around and found a place to buy water. However, I still had a long way to go and it was getting increasingly late. At least, I could ride on a proper paved road, but I still had to go upwards. I got on my bike and off I went. Trees were also starting to appear around me, so I could tell I was increasing in altitude. It was also getting more humid. After passing through another small town, I entered a more jungle-like area. Trees were getting bigger and I could hear a bunch of birds and stuff around me. Then I saw an opening in the forest where I could see up to the coast. I could even see the white structure from earlier in the day and how high up I was. Since I still had a long way to go, I went back on the road. Then I thought, in one day, I had been in a Mediterranean-like region, a desert-like area, a volcanic area, mountains, grasslands, and forests. Kind of like a mini world tour on a bicycle trip. By that point, the sun was already setting, and I figured I'd probably have to pay extra for the bike, since the shop would be closed. I was also in the dark with no lights, and I was starting to get worried about the last stretch of road, which was all downhill. If I was to get into an accident or crash somewhere, it would probably be here. Then a small bus passed by me and stopped. The driver got out and told me to get in. He probably felt pity for the idiot riding a bike in the middle of nowhere at night. Anyways, I put the bicycle in the bus and got on. I had to wait until the next morning to drop the bicycle off, but they didn't charge me extra, so I guess it's a win. After that, I went straight to the airport. Even though I couldn't visit the big volcano, I was still happy with my day. I'll just have to go back someday if I feel like seeing it up close.